DC is well known for the amount of team-ups it has in its universe. There's a bountiful amount of Justice League teams all serving a different purpose and operating differently. But I was thinking to myself, instead of looking at the Justice League all the time, the Justice Society, the Suicide Squad, the Teen Titans, there's bound to be a massive amount of DC teams that need a revival or need a certain amount of attention brought to them that can make people interested not just in the teams themselves, but the characters that come along with it. So today, I want to look at lesser known DC teams that need more attention. The first team I want to start with here is the Shadow Cabinet. They're from the Milestone Comics universe located in the Dakotaverse. So the Shadow Cabinet has been used in the DC universe before, but very scarcely. Mainly, it's because there were some sort of legal troubles that were kind of keeping these characters from solely and fully being used in the DC universe, but I think that's all done now and they can be used more freely than they would have before. They're a secret order and centuries-old organization that prioritizes all problems internationally to protect humanity at all costs. Even though they save humanity, there is still the mysterious leader behind the scenes, Dharma, who has his own agenda and which makes you question how deep the conspiracies of this team may go. I think what makes the Shadow Cabinet interesting is when you look at DC for a generalized perspective, most of the teams are good or bad. Even the teams that might have anti-heroes or villains on it, like the Suicide Squad, for example, tend to do things for good. The Shadow Cabinet, and let me keep this in mind, I'm not too fully versed in the Milestone characters, but they seem to be rather a group of heroes who do uphold good, but there's a little bit of mystery to them that you don't fully know what their end goal is all the time. Take someone like Static Shock, for example, a character that was from the Dakotaverse and has now been flung into DC on a more permanent basis than some of these other characters. And Static Shock has a lot of following behind people who really love him. I could only imagine some of these characters would benefit from that. A lot of these characters do look cool enough and interesting enough to belong in a DC universe, let alone look at their leader icon. He does seem to be somewhat their version of a Superman, but a completely different narrative and story behind his character. You could use this team as, of course, a group of heroes, characters you could more or less trust, but for example, if you have secret organizations and syndicates like villains who aren't afraid to use resources and governmental policies from behind the scenes to enact the orders that they want, the control and the power they want, why can't a good team attempt to do that as well? And you could see the Shadow Cabinet operate in that sort of way, and then see how the world around them reacts to that and how other superhero teams react to it. The next team I think deserves a little more love is Justice Incarnate, a multiversal Justice League that is tasked with protecting the multiverse from multiversal threats all over, you guessed it, the multiverse. All over DC's history, but especially over the past 10 to 15 years, DC has dabbled into the infinite multiverse more times than I care to remember. Some stories being great and some not so much. Since they like the multiverse so much, why not make it a key component to storytelling and character growth rather than using it as a constant threat or a crutch to the storytelling? Treat this team like the Justice League Unlimited animated series, where they're constantly growing with new members from different Earths, brand new characters we've never seen before, and versions of our beloved characters who could look slightly different or largely different depending on the universe they come from. Don't get me wrong, as much as the multiverse does bother me in modern day comic books, I do have a lot to complain about with it. There are still elements of the multiverse that I do really enjoy, and my curiosity takes a hold of me. For example, I haven't really been the biggest fan of the main continuity of DC for a very long time, but I love Elseworlds content, and Elseworlds is located all over different Earths of the multiverse. So there are very interesting ways to utilize the multiverse. I think what gets annoying is using the multiverse to answer questions that the writers themselves don't know how to answer, and creating villains because your heroes have become so powerful that there are no characters you can create outside of a universal multiversal scale. Why not solidify these multiversal storylines to a multiversal Justice League? Yes, you're probably getting really annoyed of hearing me saying multiversal or multiverse, because I am too. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to say it for a little while longer, because think about all those multiversal villains that they've already created, or who they can create, even multiversal creatures that are unbound by science and nature that could go up against a Justice League Incarnate. And the possibilities here of creating these teams are really cool. You could have members who come and go. You could have members who want to be a mainstay. You could have a Superman who wears all green and purple from Earth 962, or a Batman from Earth 56 who wears all medieval metal knight armor. Or bring in well-known versions of characters from Elseworlds, maybe Wonder Woman from Earth 1. There's so many potentials you could do here, and create stories for this team that don't always need to involve the destruction and chaos of the main continuity. Then I have the Secret Six. There have been a few versions of this team, but they are mostly a team of villains or somewhat neutral players who might act both as hero and villain from time to time, who are tasked to fight and or subdue other villains, led or blackmailed by Riddler or Lex Luthor. They have a bit of a Black Ops vibe to them, mixed with deep personal traumas and, of course, moral corruption, along with what would bring gritty storytelling. Over time, you could see this team become more than characters or subjects being used to a higher character's advantages, and watch these lesser villains become more anti-hero, giving reasons for this team to stick together and fight for better reasons. Personally, I think a team like this would be far better than the Suicide Squad. My interest for that team came and went. They had that good Assault on Arkham movie, and then after that, I haven't cared about any of the movies they made live action. I don't really care for the stories and comic books, and that video game was horrible. The Secret Six, starting off as a team acting as villains that slowly turn into a team of, are we actually doing things for the greater good? That then go into a team of, yeah, we somewhat operate as heroes. Some of us do things that heroes wouldn't do, of course, but we do things for the greater good. I think that's much more interesting. If you take, for example, say someone like Black Alice, who has her moments of looking a little more villainous than hero. Take someone like Deadshot, who's also taken part in this team before, who has been known to be a villain almost most of his DC historic career, but over the most recent years has turned into more of an anti-hero. Ironically, these groups of villains or characters who act a little more villainous than they do heroic could learn how to become heroes from each other. They start to realize through these teams' experiences, maybe we are meant for more. Again, they will do things that your regular hero wouldn't, but they are still fighting for the greater good. Then we look at Justice League Europe. There are so many iterations of the Justice League, as I said earlier, and so many areas of the world have had a prioritized Justice League team. Why wouldn't one of the densest places in the world like Europe, which have so many conjoined countries, not have a dedicated dedicated Justice League for themselves. Instead of spreading the main Justice League thin, this gives the opportunity to grow the names of European heroes, along with sending B-class Justice League members to be the primary heroes on the other side of the world. Rebooting this team on a full-time basis and even leaning into a more serious edge could bring in some intriguing storytelling and overall audience interest. I do find it hard to believe that while Western civilization is constantly being threatened by these characters with their immense power, why aren't we seeing more of that on the other side of the world, somewhere like Europe, more often? I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen there in comic books, because it does, but just as often there as it would, say, in America. I think it makes less sense not having a European Justice League than it does to have a full-on Justice League of Europe. It just needs to be something you have where you can now develop different heroes from all over European countries. Some of these European heroes and even villains might become fan favorites to viewers, audiences, readers. And even take pre-established characters who have had popularity before but kind of struggle with it today. Someone like Power Girl, Captain Atom, Animal Man. They could get so much more appreciation and respect if, say, they headlined this team and now had the chance to lead this team and the stories in Europe, rather than being shadowed by Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and whoever else. The stories that come with it, European countries reacting to having superheroes on a full-time basis littered throughout their communities on a level and scale that America has their heroes. It would be interesting to see how European countries would handle this. Would they invite them freely? Would they be cautious and not really want hero presences? And would some European countries even vote to outright make heroes illegal? The fallout or the acceptance of heroes in Europe would make a great story. Now we look at Shadowpact, a spur-of-the-moment creation by a group of magicians in an attempt to defeat the Spectre from removing magic from the universe. Justice League Dark may be the team that holds DC's magical popularity more today rather than the Shadowpact, but I see this team more of the pinnacle of magical companionship than I do the JLD. Well-known and lesser-known characters could all take part in this team to showcase more of the magical side of DC. That way we can have a better understanding of how it works. DC, in my opinion, has made magic a little convoluted and hard to understand over the years. The thing with the Justice League Dark is, yes, there's tons of mystical, supernatural, magical characters that take part in it, but you still from time to time have characters like a Wonder Woman or a Batman or maybe somebody else who takes part in the team being called Justice League Dark. You still operate in the ways that you would imagine a Justice League would operate. The Shadowpact, in my opinion, should be much different than a Justice League and should really have no bearing to that team whatsoever, prioritizing full magic and its properties. Their villainous threats, their potentials, their worlds go beyond the realm of Earth. They are involved with so much more on completely different planes of existence, which I think would be a somewhat nice change of scenery in DC, having areas of the world explored in which you don't always get to see. What also makes for an intriguing storyline with this team that would carry through the entire team's existence is something that the wizard Shazam has said. Named Shadowpact has been used in history for mystic champions who are doomed to fail. And we could watch a team using this name all over again. A group of characters who believe they are better than that. They will rise above that doomed failure. But as time goes on, there's always something that creeps up, pops up, or happens that shows they cannot outrun the inevitability of the Shadowpact eventually failing. And it's now this idea of, are these characters actually capable of proving the Wizard Shazam wrong and proving history wrong, that the Shadowpact can remain and succeed? Or is this team somewhat doomed from the start, even if it takes years down the line for them to find out that the Shadowpact will fail, and what exactly does that failure bring with it? Last for this video, but certainly not the least of all DC teams, the Forever People. A team of young heroes who, depending on the origin used, were either taken from Earth by Highfather and saved from brief and painful lives to be new god warriors, or they were selected members of New Genesis to take on special training. In ways, the Forever People are Highfather's chosen, and sort of the new god version of a Justice League, training together, getting to know one another for decades, creating bonds that cannot be broken. This team could be a great way to explain the billions of years of history in DC, showing that heroes and hero teams of all civilizations, no matter how powerful, have existed throughout the course of the universe's history. A constant reminder of heroism, myth, and legend. I am a big fan of new god, old god mythology and that area of DC. I think Jack Kirby was on some form of space mushrooms when he created some of these ideas. The new gods and the old gods are something I've always wanted a movie of. I think even a series depicting this side of the DC universe would be so amazing. You would know it's connected to DC, but it doesn't need to lay so heavily on superheroes per se. There is so much potential in this area. With this team, you could see, like I said, that outside influence of why heroism even exists in the universe. And even though the Justice League may not ever know of who the Forever People were, if the Forever People are not operating still at the time of modern day, their influence has just spread over all cultures and civilizations over billions of years. It's because of them why heroism and teams even exist, why they exist to fight evil. The Forever People could go down in myth and legend, drawn on stone on planets that featured lesser civilizations who couldn't even speak yet. Materials and equipment left behind on other worlds by them, in which those lesser people created myth and legend and stories of their beings. And then you bring in the mother boxes and the fact that the entire team, when touching it together, can create the Infinity Man, and the Infinity Man is supposed to be this insane powerhouse to deal with threats that even they themselves, new gods, can't deal with. There's a lot of potential on how you could operate this team and even make them the Justice League before the Justice League. So there you go, 6 lesser known teams in the DC universe that I believe have an unbelievable amount of potential and have also been forgotten about, need revivals, and need to be dealt with much more heavily than they currently are now. Some of these teams could bring in more interest, more readers, more fans, and could even develop sides of the DC universe that have either A, been neglected over time, or aren't as detailed as maybe they could be. But now, you guys in the comments, let me know what you thought of the 6 options I have, and if there are any other teams out there that I didn't put in this video, what is your choice for lesser known DC teams that need attention? That is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.